Hello and welcome back to Changing Lives, Changing Worlds, the Art of Conscious Evolution. I'm your host, Joel Todd, an RTC as well as a multidimensional healer. And today, my guest, Cam Williams, is here to chat with me about all things change and evolution. Um, and Cam and I actually went to school together. So Cam has a diploma in transpersonal therapeutic counseling, like myself. And he's also graduated from the 3-year Somatic Experiencing training, and I'm sure we'll talk about that today, Cam. And Cam works with clients one-on-one from the ages of 14 up to 100. And he really focuses on clients that are looking to deepen their ability to make conscious contact with their body for the purpose of processing stuck emotions and trauma. And he also really leans into self-compassion training, as he sees it as a necessary component to genuine healing. So Cam, welcome. I really appreciate you coming on here and having this conversation with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
You bet. So the way, I'm just figuring out this podcast interview thing myself, and things are changing. But the way I like to do it, for you, Cam, as well as my listeners, I like to get into a bit of what's been true for Cam's evolution and change, what's helped him, what's been hard, that sort of thing. And then we'll talk more generally about, maybe some somatic experiencing with Cam, since has that training, or self-compassion, or any other topic. So that's going to be the format for this. And I've got some questions that I suggested to Cam, but who knows, things may just pop up and go with what shows up. So, Cam, my first question is, what would you say are some of the biggest changes in your life that have happened?
Are you talking
Sort of personal change.
personal change, like in terms of psychological change? Is that more what you mean?
Yeah, like you personally, as well as maybe mental health or emotional health wise, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. And are you talking about change in terms of healing and change for the better, or in terms of change where things got hard?
Well, it could be either or. That's actually a really good question. My experience is often that the hard stuff often transforms into something good, but maybe not always. So why don't we start with something that started out as a real difficulty in your life, and then maybe has moved into something else?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think that the sort of obvious one is, so I'm 44 now, and my whole journey, I've been on this healing journey since I was about 19 years old.
Okay.
And as you said, often what sort of kicks off change is something hard.
Yeah.
And so I had this experience of a panic attack shortly before my 19th birthday. And it was really destabilizing in lots of different ways. It really shook up my sense of ground in the world, who I thought I was, what I thought the world was. And it was really frightening at the time, really frightening.
Yeah, I bet.
And I didn't know how to deal with it. And actually most people I went to for help also didn't know how to deal with it.
Right.
So I explored on my own. I read a ton of books, and slowly over many years, kind of started to piece together even what had happened, what it was. I didn't even know at the time that it was a panic attack. I just thought I was going crazy.
Right. Okay.
At the time. So piecing together what it was and how to start to relate to that in a way that was actually helpful and not contributing to the sort of mental spirals that panic and anxiety kind of are. So that was the hard thing. And then the good that came out of it was this journey, really, that I'm still on.
Okay. Are there certain ideas or perspectives that you had then that you recognize now were maybe contributing to what was going on, or like maybe something you believed about the world or about yourself or something to like that?
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, yeah, there were certain thoughts, that I look back, um, that created, or maybe not created, but sort of arose with the sense of panic.
Okay.
And thoughts like the world is a bad place, uh, life is no good,
Hmm.
these sort of global negative beliefs, that went along with, there's certain sort of images that went along with that were frightening to me. And then this sense of, I find this with my clients as well, usually with panic, there's a sense of wanting to escape, but I
Okay.
can't. There's a
Okay.
sense of being trapped. And so in my mind at the time, it was a sense of I'm trapped in this sort of sad, horrible world that I can't get out of. It was
Hmm.
quite a global
Right.
perception of things.
Sure.
Um,
And that's a big thing to,
yeah.
to surmount, right? I mean, the whole world's against you. That's what it seems
The
like, right?
Yeah, well, not necessarily against me, but the whole world is kind of this sort of sad,
Hmm. Okay.
distressing place,
Okay.
and yeah, there's no escape
There's no
from the
escape.
world in any
Right.
meaningful way. Like here we are. So yeah, that was the sense that, and it took me ages to even to be able to articulate that.
Right.
All I knew at the time was that I was having these really scary feelings
Hmm.
and these really scary thoughts that I couldn't get away from. That was the other thing. I want to escape these thoughts and feelings, and I can't escape them.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if that sort of gives you a
Yeah.
picture of what what that was like.
Yeah. And do you have a sense of what um actually before I ask you that question, how how would you describe yourself at that point or leading up to that panic attack? As a person, um what was your personality like? What were you like,
Mm.
in relationships, in the world? How would you describe yourself?
So I was only 19,
Hmm.
so I was a kid.
Right.
So I'll bring in the other piece too, which is that was not consistent at all with my personality before,
Okay.
which was, so these thoughts and feelings that showed up, I had never really had anything remotely close to that
Hmm.
type of experience before, that was part of what made it so distressing, because it was like it came out of nowhere. Um, it was also on the heels of, at that age, I was experimenting with different recreational drugs,
Hmm.
and it was on the heels of, basically a big night out, having taken, I think it was ecstasy. And so there's a component there,
Hmm.
significant, about being tired, depleted. I don't know a whole lot about how those drugs work, but my understanding is they kind of deplete certain hormones,
Hmm.
and
There's
so
that
you can have
crash
this, the
afterward.
crash after the high.
Right.
And so I think it was this combination of that, and then these certain thoughts and feelings I just never had before.
Hmm.
So that's an important piece, because before then I was quite I was quite a positive,
Hmm.
happy kid. It was had a very kind of, almost, bordering on naive, um, in terms of my worldview, and then that changed from that to, yeah, to this kind of dark, sort of went from one way to the other.
Hmm. Quite a
Um,
quick shift.
yeah, it was like, and that's why earlier when I said it was really destabilizing,
Right.
that's a bit more of an explanation as to
Right.
what it was, from this kind of sunny disposition to this really dark view, and that was distressing.
Can imagine.
Yeah.
Hmm. What would you say to somebody who's had a similar experience, maybe in that age range, or just listening to this? Is there something that you would want them to know that you've realized?
Um, what would I want them to know? Well, first of all, there's help out there,
Hmm.
and there's a lot more help out there, and a lot more knowledge out there than there now than there was when I went through that in
Yeah.
the early 2000s. Um, so that would be the first thing.
Yeah.
That there are people out there who can help you. Um, yeah, and there are ways to process these things. Um, there are sort of ways to process these things that are healthy and lead to positive change. So we don't have to stay stuck in these endless mental loops. There is a way out.
Hmm.
Um, but it takes, for most of us, we need help, and it takes time, and it takes persistence.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's really hard to ask for help or to accept help. Hmm? No, that's been true for me. Was that difficult for you too, or
Yeah, generally.
generally?
Yeah, even as a trained therapist,
Hmm.
I find it can be challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Me too. Um, Now you mentioned that you were reading a lot of books, kind of following that, right? You were trying to understand what was going on. Did that help, or where would you see that? I did the same thing for many, many years. So I'm curious about
Mm.
your experience.
Yeah. Um, yes and no. A lot of things helped, and a lot of things didn't. I'll just say that some things really resonated, and some things didn't.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I mean, without getting, I feel like we could spend the whole podcast just talking about the books that I've read.
Fair enough.
Um,
Yeah. Fair enough.
but yeah, I would say some did and some didn't. Some didn't. Some just didn't apply. Some were just very kind of like pop psychology and really didn't get to the root of what was happening. Um, to be honest, it wasn't until I started reading the somatic experiencing stuff many years later
Okay.
that really sort of fully, that was the most sort of fleshed out explanation for my experience I'd ever heard.
Okay.
I went, oh, this completely explains what
Hmm.
I went through and what I have been going through, which is part of the reason why I went that direction.
Right. It really worked. It really helped you, and so you were drawn to it. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, it helped me explain.
Hmm.
It helped me put my experience into a sort of context
Right.
where I went, oh, okay, this isn't just like a CAM experience. This is how humans experience threat and fear and wanting to escape and overwhelm, and this is what it's like. And it really just, yeah, that was an enormous relief, because for ages, this is funny because I haven't thought about this in a while. I thought there was something, so, and this is an important piece that I try to bring into with all my clients. I thought
Hmm.
there was something wrong with me
Hmm.
specifically.
Hmm.
And when I found out that, oh, this is just how human beings in general respond to a perceived threat, it really, really it was relieving. It lessened a lot of the shame and a lot of the feeling like I'm the only one. Um, yeah, so that was an
Hmm.
important piece.
Yeah. It wasn't somatic experiencing for me specifically, but I was going into what they sometimes call analysis paralysis, right? Where you're trying
Mm,
to like figure out in your mind how to solve your problem, how to feel better, but you can't feel better by thinking,
yeah.
right? The whole idea of somatic work and some of these others is thinking is part of the sort of equation to figuring things out. We need to make sense of things in a sense, but we also need to feel them. right? And that, like you're saying, it unlocks things that no matter how much you think about something, I don't think you can get there ever. So
I would agree. And in addition, my thinking is colored by the state that I'm in. So if I'm in a state of high distress, my thinking is completely colored by that state, and it tends to be quite distorted.
right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
I was
even
gonna say,
part of the brain is not functioning, right? I mean, it shuts down.
Exactly. It shuts down. So my ability to think clearly and reason and stuff like that, if I'm highly anxious or panicking or depressed, my thinking is pretty unreliable at that point.
Yeah.
So that's another reason, and I think that's how people get caught in these spirals. Is I'm thinking through this fearful lens or through this depressed lens, and that thinking isn't too clear. So yeah, I think we need a way to like unplug from those loops and find a different angle.
Right. Yeah, and often it's through the body. It's through a new experience. At least that's what I've found with my clients and for myself too. Yeah. Um, are there certain, sometimes it's called conditioning, but certain perspectives or beliefs that you feel have changed for you since 19 or even a bit later in your life to now? And, how do you think that the sort of reconsidering those beliefs has helped you?
It's a good question. I'm going to answer it in a way that I'll answer it. It might not be the way, that you're thinking, but
That's okay.
It's I would phrase it more like it's how I relate to my thinking that's changed.
Okay.
And it relates to kind of what I was just saying, is I think I just take it as a whole a lot less seriously.
Okay.
In particular, when I'm upset. So when I'm upset, I go, whatever I'm thinking right now is not accurate. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in my perceptions at the moment.
Right.
So rather than kind of looking at each belief individually, I feel like it's sort of my relationship with thinking as a whole has shifted. I don't know if that quite answers your question,
No,
but
that
that's
makes
the way
sense.
that I would answer it.
Yeah, you're taking your thoughts less seriously, essentially, especially when you're distressed, when you're upset, when you're triggered.
Especially that, because that's where I used to go to these really, really dark places. Is I'd be really highly anxious or depressed, and then I'd be thinking from that place.
Right.
And it just made it worse. And so yeah, that was one of the bigger shifts I made. I don't know, maybe 15 years ago or something like that, where I just went, trying to lean into my thinking when I'm feeling this way has no value. And I'll whatever it is I might want to think about, I'll think about it later when I'm feeling differently.
Okay. So really noticing your state, like how you're feeling, what state you're in.
Yeah.
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 And what do are there things that you did or experienced that helped you sort of take a step back or refocus in this way? Like, is there, what do you think helped you come to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a lot of things, if I'm honest.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a few different ways I could answer this. I feel like
Sure.
On a granular level, this is what I teach all my clients. It's what I would call attentional control. It's learning to put my attention somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah.
At a sort of real, trying to get to it with a pair of tweezers. it's learning that just because I'm having these thoughts doesn't mean I have to focus there.
Right.
There are many other things that I could focus on in this moment that would make me feel better. And so, like, I often, with clients, with that, to me, that's what grounding techniques are, like bringing my attention into this present moment,
Mm-hmm.
into what's actually happening here and now. To me, part of what I'm doing there is I'm taking my attention away from here and putting it on something that's solid and stable and present. And that alone, I find, tends to create a shift. It's like I'm stepping outside of this little mental bubble I've been lost in. So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
The other is, I would say, some form of self-compassion,
Okay. Okay.
some form of holding myself in a context of care and support while I experience this difficult thing.
Okay.
I find that often immediately creates a shift.
So how would you handle that before? So you're meeting yourself in these difficult times, these difficult moments with compassion. What were you doing before you did that?
Oh, I'd just be lost in thought. Just be lost in thought. Just be thinking, and
Right.
trying to think my way out of this. As you said earlier, trying to think my way out of this bad
Mm.
feeling. And there will probably be lots of negative thoughts about myself as well in the middle
Mm.
of that, beating myself up.
So you're kind of focusing on the thing to be afraid of, the fearful thoughts, and kind of spiraling down. Is that, or
Yeah,
how would you describe it?
it's funny to be asked these questions because I haven't really thought about
Hmm.
this in a long time. What it is that I used to do. I suppose, yeah. I mean, it's really just sort of like an endless train of negative, you know, negative, fearful images or sad images in my head,
Hmm.
uh, and just being sort of caught in that, and not realizing that I could step out of it. That's just a particular sort of thought loop, and that's not reality as a
Right.
whole.
Right. It's interesting as you're describing this, like this stepping back. I mean, that's mindfulness, right? In the way I understand it, this ability to put your attention where you choose, taking the choice back.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of our world, I recently saw somewhere on social media land, that attention is the new currency.
Mm-hmm.
With so many different options, all the different AI, everything is changing in the technology world, and attention is currency.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of our attention, the algorithms and a lot of the social media, they're designed, and I've been there's this ex CIA guy that's been describing how it works, kind of the way they do this, but they do it in a way to fragment our attention, to essentially do the opposite of integration, which is bringing you know more safety into our system, so to speak. I
Mm-hmm.
think to be
Mm-hmm.
able to be more mindful of taking back the choice of our attention, so it's not fragmented, it's not everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, and even what's happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The internet's a good thing, but there's limitless options of where to put our attention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of different. I don't know what you want to call them, companies or whatever that want.
right,
They're trying to get our attention
right,
and control it to
yeah,
a degree. But yeah, that's it's one of the it's one of the first things I teach pretty much every client. Sort of just go, hey, you have a choice as to where you put
mm,
your attention.
mm,
That's like the ground floor thing to know.
Right.
And where I put my attention has an impact on my whole nervous system.
Right.
And so those two things are like, to me, every single tool that I teach is based on those two things, or that's the starting point. I get to choose where I put my attention, and where I put my attention has an impact on how I feel.
Okay. And so you just mentioned the nervous system. That's very important, right? And you said it's so. What do you usually teach people about the nervous system? What do you think you've been through the somatic training. It's very much in line with what's happening in the nervous system, right? I haven't done the training myself, but
Mhm.
so what do you think are the fundamentals of what people should know about their nervous systems and the way it works, all those things? Like what?
That's a big question.
Yeah. I mean, where do you start with your
Yeah.
clients?
Yeah.
As far as
Yeah. So, it depends on the client and sort of their level of receptivity and what they're
okay.
interested in terms of the way that they want to work. But I suppose the first place I start is that we all have one. We all have a nervous system, and
Okay.
all our nervous systems. There are certain commonalities that we all have.
Okay.
So, yes, everyone is an individual and has individual unique ways of experiencing their particular nervous system, but there are certain things that are universal. So it's often the place I'll start, something like that. And then I'll explain a little bit about the broadly speaking, the two branches of the nervous system. So there's the sympathetic branch, otherwise known as the fight flight branch.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not necessarily fight flight. It's also the branch that it's kind of online when we're just alert and engaged in our day. Or in metaphors, it's the gas. It's the gas of the
Okay.
nervous system.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there's the brake. The brake is the parasympathetic. And that's the branch of the nervous system that's responsible for calming us down, for discharging stress, for rest, things like digestion. Feelings of connection is also part of that branch of the nervous system. And so I look at it a bit like the way I often explain it is like you have, sympathetic activation and the parasympathetic brake on the other side. And so in a sort of a healthy nervous system, there's a balance. It's kind of like we get activated during the day
Mm-hmm.
to a degree because we're just engaged in the day. And then, in the evening, things kind of settle down. We rest and we wind down. And where people often come to see me is that there isn't that balance. It's out of balance. It's usually more kind of like that, where it's like they're running here all the time. Their sympathetic is running on high, and they never have that parasympathetic innervation that would create feelings of rest and relaxation. It's just chronically, and that can look like chronic worry. It can look like chronic anxiety. Or it can look like panic attacks. So that's a real quick kind of nutshell explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I usually explain is that what most of the time what we're working on is activating the parasympathetic because that's the one that calms us down, discharges stress, and it also helps us process trauma. Really, if we have trauma that's held in the body, and our parasympathetic is sort of under stimulated.
Mm-hmm.
Another way of saying that is we don't feel any safety in our body.
Okay.
We can't really process much. So most of the work that I do with clients is stimulating the parasympathetic to bring things back into balance.
Okay.
Does that making sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I know these things, but this is for my listeners, right? Like, I understand this stuff, but I know often it's everyone takes things in differently. So having many different ways of describing these things, I think, is really valuable because some people will hear it differently depending on the person doing it. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's great value in that. Um, Now you mentioned trauma and processing trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So how, is there a certain way that you understand trauma? You said it's stored in the body, or it sits in the body. So how do you kind of, when working with clients, is there a certain way that you think of trauma, or
Yeah, that's a good question. I tend to look at it as, a highly charged emotional experience from the past
okay?
that hasn't been completed. Or another way of saying it is a survival response from the past that was never completed. And so there's a part of our brain and a part of our system that's kind of stuck there
Hmm.
and doesn't realize that threatening experience is actually over. There's part of us that thinks it's still happening continuously. And that's one explanation of kind of what trauma is like. There's
Hmm.
this feeling of threat that is disproportionate with what's actually happening in my current reality.
Right.
And so yeah, I look at it as my job to kind of slowly approach that place of stuckness, that
Hmm.
place where we still feel like we're in the past,
Hmm.
to gently, ever so gently, at the pace that works for the client, approach that and start to discharge some of that energy that's being held.
Right. Right.
That's yeah.
And what you mentioned gently, and I know this is important, but why is it important that that trauma is dealt with in a gentle way? I mean, we even have a term for it, trauma informed, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially handling it gently, right? The
Mm-hmm.
basis of it. Why is that important?
Well, because often these experiences from the past are tied to a feeling of threat, and
Right.
often it's a feeling of severe threat, like a feeling of I'm going to die.
Right.
And so, if we approach that too quickly, it can kind of stimulate these big, overwhelming feelings in such a way that people sort of um, re-experience those in a way that isn't helpful, in a way that's overwhelming. And so then there's even more fear around it. And it's like, well, I don't even want to go there because anyway,
Mm.
anytime I go near there, it overwhelms me again, and it's just this sort
Right.
of re-traumatization. So it's important that we go in tiny little steps. It's almost like an analogy I use sometimes is like it's a big meal
Okay.
that has to be digested one little bite at a time.
Okay. I like that.
So we have to, it's almost like I often explain this to clients. I have to teach my client's brain that we can dip into some of this energy and that they don't die.
Right.
That they can feel a little drop of that energy
Hmm.
and it's okay. And then we do it again. We feel another little drop and it's okay. And every time we do that, we're sort of teaching their brain, hey, this is actually okay to go here. It's actually all right. And in that way, we kind of build trust and safety with the process.
Hmm.
And bit by bit, whatever energy is held there can be pulled up and released.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so I want to switch gears. We've been talking, theoretical stuff, but I want to bring this back to, um, an experience. So, is there a traumatic thing that you've worked through,
Mm.
and how did that? What do you think were the important pieces of that change for you, working through that?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Um, well, I think, the thing I mentioned earlier, really, that was That was the big trauma for me, which it may not sound like a trauma too. So and this is another important bit about trauma too, actually, is that people often will minimize their trauma basically because they think, well, I wasn't in Afghanistan. I didn't see some, horrible things in combat or, so people often think because it wasn't this major thing that they don't have trauma.
Right. We compare
And
like, oh,
we
it wasn't as
compare.
bad as yeah.
Yeah. And so either who am I to complain about that or I don't think it's trauma because it wasn't this extreme thing, but that's just not how trauma works. I mean, it's different. What can traumatize us is different in everybody. And so, that was part of my journey, was realizing that actually that experience that I had was traumatic because it was so unbelievably scary, psychologically and emotionally. So even though, I didn't, there was no sort of threat that was objective. Internally, I felt extremely threatened by this experience. Psychologically, I felt threatened. And so, so that was the trauma. And that was part of my healing was even just realizing that. It was just going, oh, that was a trauma. That was a big emotional experience. It was too much for me to handle at the time. And that lingered for many years. So that's part one, of the explanation.
Right.
What was the question? Was how did I work it through? Was that the question?
Yeah, I mean, what sort of things helped you in this case with this trauma that happened at age 19? What do you think are the and generally, like you said earlier, which I think is a really important point, it's not usually just one thing, right?
Yeah.
It's often a combination of things.
Yeah. And I do think that's a really important point. There's no, and I got stuck there for a long time looking for the magic bullet.
Right. Yeah.
And it's often a combination of things. I mean, I think broadly speaking, well, no, I'll keep it personal. Actually, keep it personal. I find myself wanting to go into like teaching mode.
Right. I do that too.
But yeah, let me just sit with that for a second. I think, I think one of the biggest things was starting to see, in a way, just the nature of thought and emotion, and that they're by their very nature they're impermanent and they're changing all the time. That helped a tremendous amount because, and I find this with clients too, but this was true personally, is I felt like it was going to go on forever. I'm going to feel this way forever. And it's just never true. It's just because thoughts, if I allow them, they will just keep changing all by themselves, and my feelings as well. If I create space for my experience to kind of flow through, it'll evolve. So I think sort of seeing that in a way, like seeing the nature of thought to just shift and change all the time, all by itself, by its very nature, that helped. That helped a huge amount. But I think the other piece for me really has been and continues to be self-compassion. To be honest with you, it's holding myself in a loving place as I experience these difficult feelings. For me, that's been, I said there's no magic bullet, but if there was one, I would say that would be it for me, anyways. Was realizing how much that was required for me, and I do think it's true for most people, but to be held lovingly as I have my difficult experience. And that can mean held lovingly by somebody else in a therapy office or in a workshop.
Right. And I think
Or
that's usually where it starts for most people, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, because it needs to be modeled, I think. And yeah, but also for me to hold myself in that loving way. And there
Mm.
are, we can get into that if you want the specifics of that. But that's, I would say, some combination of those two things for me really, really, really shifted things.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I mean, the training that you and I did for 3 years very much focused on relational, the importance of relationship. And I think we just touched on one of those things is often it's through relationship, whether it's a therapist, a friend, a parent or caregiver or whoever in our lives that like models, like you said, how to care, that it's okay that we care for ourselves, that we hold what's hard, not as the end of the road, not as the last place we're going to visit. This is just a stop
Mm.
over, so to speak, and we can have more than one experience. We can feel these hard things like anger or grief or whatever it is, but then we can also hold that or allow it to be there with compassion, with this loving presence. I
Yeah,
think that's what you're saying, is it?
yeah, yeah. That's effectively what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And to me, in my view, it's actually it's necessary.
Right.
It's a necessary context for healing.
Right.
This relational. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, we don't show up in the world and know how to do that. I think in many ways society kind of assumes that, like, oh, you should know how to, feel good and take care of yourself. But if no one shows us, how do we know?
And that's, to be honest with you, that's one of the things I teach almost all my clients who are
Hmm.
coming struggling.
Hmm.
I say something like, well, no one ever showed you how to sit lovingly with your experience.
Hmm.
Did they? And, and,
Right.
and
Right.
I've never had anybody go, yep, yep. Both my parents showed me how to do that. In most cases, it's the opposite. It was like we were shut down in some way, or some part of us was shut down,
Right.
and and a big part of the healing process is reversing that and
Hmm.
going, there's this part of me that no one ever showed me I could sit with lovingly.
Hmm.
And so now I'm going to do it now because nobody ever did it then. Nobody ever showed me.
Right. What do just thinking back in your life, what were the ways or what were the sort of indication that you got to shut down? I mean, did I guess the first question is, was that what you experienced?
Yes, it was in certain ways.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
And what did that look like? Just to sort of help people, maybe they've had similar experiences, right?
sure, yeah. And so this is, to me, this speaks to the point about trauma earlier as well. Is
Mm.
like, and I hear this a lot from clients. Is they sort of go, well, I had a pretty good childhood, so I can't, who am I to complain? I
Right.
didn't have, my parents didn't abuse me or anything, um, and so often there's a bit of work to be done around sort of like, yes, but there there's a part of you that didn't get what you needed, and
Right.
even though your parents were lovely,
Right.
and so for me, I'm one of those people where I went, on paper, my childhood was great. Two loving parents and a sister, and we were financially okay, um, and so it wasn't until much later that I realized, as I did some of this training and work on myself, oh, my mom in all these sort of subtle ways dismissed and invalidated my feelings on a regular basis, and so I learned to do the same to myself,
Mm.
basically dismiss and invalidate my experience.
You-
And yeah,
I was just going to ask, like, do you remember what some of those phrases were? Like,
mm. um, Well, it would be things like, oh, you don't really feel that way, do
Mm,
you?
right.
I mean, and it sounds quite innocuous, but but I don't know if innocuous is the right word, but sort of sounds a bit harmless, you know.
Right. Right.
Um, but it's not. She's sort of saying, she's telling me I don't feel what I feel. So you can
Right.
think about how confusing that is for a kid.
Right. And as children, we're looking for direction from the adults, right? The mature adults. That's the idea.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, we're looking for a mirror, and yeah. So then when my experience is sort of, so that's one example, or another example, again, very kind of subtle, but like I might say that I feel sad or something, and she might say, well, it's probably because of this,
hmm.
you know, or well, why don't you go call a friend?
Right. Right.
And it doesn't sound that bad, you know, and it's not that bad, but it's this subtle kind of um
It's not being
not
recognized,
it's
right?
not being recognized, it's not being seen, it's not being honored, it's not being sat with,
Right.
it's being sort of subtly diminished and ignored. And yeah, so just, you know, hundreds and hundreds upon hundreds of experiences like that, and I learned to do the same thing to myself.
Right. Right. Yeah. One more direct example came to my mind as you were sharing. Um, One phrase I heard not that often, but enough. I'll give you something to cry about, right?
Oh, you actually heard that?
Oh, I actually heard
That
that.
was, yeah.
And my dad's like one of the most loving men, but he would get stressed, and anger was one of the ways that he would handle, protect his nervous system, because that's what he learned from his family. Anger was one of the allowed emotions. A lot of emotions you don't express, but anger is one of them. That's okay. Um, and so that was, that's something I heard, but often, what strikes me in my family was I'm very much an observer. I like to watch what's happening. Um, so two things stood out. One, I was the eldest in my family, and I could always just find my way. So it's like, oh, we don't have to worry about Joel. Like I had younger twin sisters, and so a lot of focus was on them. Right? They needed a lot of attention, and so I became this kind of like self-sufficient, independent child that didn't necessarily get the attention on what was going on for me.
Mm, hmm.
So that was a big one. It's like it's not an error of it's an error of omission, so to speak, where it's like just not the attention. And then the other one was what was the other one I was thinking of? Oh, just in what I experienced with my parents. Because I could tell, and I didn't necessarily understand it cognitively or mentally at the time, but when I saw my parents get upset, I would see them try to get rid of it.
Mm,
They would try to push it down. If we were having a heated conversation, I would get in heated conversations with my mom when I was a kid, and you could tell, she just got overwhelmed. And so it'd be like, no, we're not talking about this, and then we would never actually resolve anything. And
mm,
so this is sort of the model was you just don't address these things. You just sort of sweep them under the rugs.
mhm,
So those are
mhm,
some examples of how it showed up for me. And I don't share this to criticize my parents. My parents were wonderful, like you said, in many, many ways. But no matter how good it is, any parent, even me, and understanding all this stuff, I still screw up with my son.
mhm.
I make lots of mistakes with him, and um, one day he'll be in a therapist's office talking to somebody.
Talking about what
Yeah,
dad
yeah.
did or didn't do.
And I actually, it's funny. I hadn't thought of this, but I remember he was like maybe 1.5, 2. And I decided that in some ways I was going to fuck him up, so to speak. Like there would be things that I did or didn't do that would impact him in his life.
Mm.
Um, and then it was actually really freeing as a parent,
Right.
even just another human being. It's like, it's okay. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to do the best not to. I'm going to do the best to correct them when they happen.
Yeah.
But even then, life just has this way of you know relationship. That's what happens. But we learn from it too. So
Mm.
yeah, that was very freeing as a parent. I remember when I made that conscious choice.
I just felt, as you said that, I felt like this like opening in my solar plexus.
Yeah.
This just yeah, something about that. Just that the freeing, how freeing that is to kind of to be okay with, to give yourself that much grace
Hmm.
and go, yeah, I'm going to screw up and it's okay.
Yeah, and I mean that's an example of the self compassion you're talking about, right? It's just like
Yeah.
it, and some people might think, well, then you just don't try. But I would say it actually frees me to try more. I'm just less rigid about it. I'm less kind of like worried.
And that's actually, the research shows that as well. There's loads of research on self compassion.
Hmm.
And I don't know what the number is now. The last I checked, it was like over 7,000 studies now.
Oh, wow. Okay, it's well studied.
It's exploded since the early 2000s.
Okay.
Um, and that's one of the things that they discovered is people think, oh, if I'm self compassionate, I'm not going to try as hard.
Mm.
In whatever, it could be in parenting or in my career or whatever, but it was actually very conclusively shown the opposite, that you're more likely to really give it your all because you're less afraid to fail
Wow.
because you've got your own back.
Hmm.
So that's to me what you're describing. You're like,
Right.
it didn't, it actually created more freedom and more energy, not constriction.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I think that has come from that, and probably other things too, but when I make a mistake with my son, I apologize.
Mm.
You know, and I'm sort of showing him that it's okay to make mistakes. It's part of being human.
Yeah, and modeling what repair looks like.
Right. Right. Actually, that's a good topic. What is there something that you teach your clients or talk about along the lines of repair in
Of
relationship?
repair.
Yeah.
I don't talk about it too explicitly.
Okay.
Um, to be honest with you, and I don't know whether that's just because that's the nature of my client base. I don't. Relationship is not my focus,
Right.
but if of course it comes into session, but does tend to come in. But my focus is usually more, if it does come up, is more sort of authentic communication,
Hmm.
like you and I learned,
Right.
So like getting to the softer feelings under the anger and communicating those, and what I thought, you know, that my partner's behavior meant about me,
Right.
my fear about who I am, communicating that. That's more kind of the realm, but that does have a reparative function when we communicate in that way.
Right. Right. So I understand what you're saying, but I just for the viewers, what can you give an example maybe from a client or just something that's happened for you as far as, you know, what was happening in the relationship and then what were the sort of the things happening underneath? Cuz these different layers of what is actually happening for someone, when we're say in an argument with somebody or whatever. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
can be really valuable to be able to step back and say, oh well, maybe there's another way to see this. so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean the 4-step process that you and I know, which is for the viewers is like sort of let yourself well, maybe I'll just make it personal. I'm just trying to think of a specific example with my partner.
Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here, Kim.
Okay, it's okay. I'm trying to think of an example that's like a good one to give. Actually, you know what? This one seems silly, but in a way, because it's silly, I think it's a good example because
Oh,
these
sure.
are the things that are easy to dismiss. So one of the things, and it's going to sound stupid, and in a way, it is on the surface, it's stupid. But
Yeah. Mm.
one of the things that I would get this big trigger about from my partner is the way that she would hand things to me.
Okay. Okay.
She would do it in such a way that I felt like was so sloppy and careless. Like, oh, there you go. Like, there's, here's the remote control.
Okay.
The opposite is sort of gently going like, okay, I'm going to make sure you've got it. It would be like, again, sounds stupid, but it would bring up this anger, this sort of disproportionate, to the point where I go, why does this make me so mad?
Okay.
And so as I sort of processed it, I realized underneath that was actually this sense of like, she doesn't care about me. I'm not being considered.
Mm.
She doesn't care enough to make sure that when she hands me something, I've got it. There was actually underneath, and again, it seems so silly, but underneath that was the sense of I'm not important.
Mm.
I don't matter enough for you to take the care to do this handoff in such a way that you make sure I have it.
Mm.
And yeah, and that goes back to what I talked about earlier about like there's this kind of relationship message that I'm getting from the seemingly trivial thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's poking this wound in me that's I don't matter.
Mm.
And then when I look at it in that context, I go, oh, that explains the size of the anger.
Right.
But before that, it was confusing. Why am I getting so mad about this? It's such a silly thing.
Right.
So, and I'm sure there are probably other maybe examples that might be better, but I find value actually in talking about these seemingly silly ones too, as in addition to the sort of bigger ones, but
Right.
because it's not really about her handing me the remote.
No.
It's about me interpreting something she does as meaning something about me that was a wound from my upbringing.
Right.
That my experience doesn't matter, that I don't matter. So, and then to communicate that to my partner and go, I realize why I get so mad about that. It actually touches on this old wound. So, in that way, I think that type of communication has this naturally reparative, because we're just automatically we're going deeper than the anger now.
Right. And for your partner, she might be in those circumstances. She might be confused and kind of like feel defensive. It's like, I just gave him the remote or whatever it is. Like, holy smokes, and we have this other counter reaction.
Yeah. And who knows what that brings up in her.
Right.
Somebody getting angry for something that isn't important.
Right.
And what that brings up in her touches on her from her past. And yeah.
Reminds me of the expression we heard a million times in our training: we're never upset for the reasons we think, right? Like, we think it's because our partner is giving us the remote in this way. But no, it's more what's being triggered inside, what is being, that fear or that wound that is being reopened, is being revisited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's being revisited. And that takes us back in a way to the definition of trauma. It's this thing from the past that part of me doesn't realize is actually over. part of me thinks it's still happening now.
Right.
And that's what I'm feeling.
Right.
I'm feeling that.
Yeah. You're being reminded of the part of you that still believes that it's not being valued.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to feel that, because that's really, really uncomfortable
Mm.
to actually feel what that feels like. I don't matter.
Mm.
And so that's where the anger shows up. It's a, I know you know this, but it's a protection.
Right.
It's a defense. And then that's where in my mind, the somatic experiencing can start to come in. It's like, okay, well, what if we actually did feel that? What would it be like to start to actually sit with that and sort of metabolize that, rather than just spend my life avoiding it, defending against it?
Right. Yes, I don't know. I haven't done this for a while. I used to use this analogy, like these big feelings that we have. They're like this balloon that's blown up really, really big. And if we let it go, it's just going to fly all over the place, and then it'll just be there again, basically. But if we let out a little bit of air, there's a little bit less pressure from the balloon pushing on us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're feeling it a little bit less, and we can't just let it all at once, but we have to do it slowly and gently relieve that pressure. Otherwise, it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly what we were talking about earlier in terms of going slow for, the somatic experiencing term for that is titration.
Right.
Titration, which is, do you know that term?
Yeah.
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 So you want me to explain it just?
Sure. Yeah. Please.
For the audience, but yeah, it's a chemistry term.
Okay. I didn't know
So
that.
you know how yeah. So it's like, how if you have two substances that would explode if I just dumped one in the other, it would blow up.
Right.
But if I take a dropper and I take a drop and I drop it in, it sort of fizzles and then absorbs. And take another drop, fizzles and absorbs. That's titration. I'm mixing these two chemicals in a titrated way.
Okay.
And so somatic experiencing kind of borrowed that term from chemistry. And in that sense, that's what we're talking about. It's like letting a little bit out at a time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a little bit out at a time, or, contacting that feeling a little bit and then allowing some space for integration. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. One analogy I often use with clients is like if we feel too much, if we try to take too much of it, it's like kind of like our nervous system's a bit like a circuit breaker, and so we'll blow the circuit, right, and then the whole thing shuts down. We might go into shutdown, and then we have to kind of wait a while for the system to restart, and but if we do it a little bit, then it doesn't break the circuit breaker, and the system isn't overwhelmed, right? We stay in that window of what feels safe.
Yeah, I like that metaphor. And it really is like the shutdown. So that's another little nuance of the nervous system stuff that I didn't touch on earlier. But in we talked about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The parasympathetic is really made of two branches. I didn't explain it earlier because I didn't want to give too much information, but it's often described as a brake, the parasympathetic brake. It's sort of, it slows things down. And there's this sort of, I don't want to say one's healthy and one's unhealthy, but in sort of in a balanced nervous system, there's this nice flow of activation, deactivation. But there's this sort of emergency brake, which is like the circuit breaker that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And that's called what's called, to give you the term, is a dorsal ventral branch of the parasympathetic. Mm-hmm. That's the emergency shutdown branch. And that's what happens when something feels like too much, mm-hmm. and our system shuts down. That's that branch of the parasympathetic is being activated. And that's one of the more primitive branches of our nervous system. Like, we're born with it.
Right.
We're not born with the other one. So the other one that's developed through healthy connection, that requires, attunement and connection with caregivers, and that's developed as we
Yeah.
grow. But the emergency shutdown one, we're born with that.
Hmm.
And so a circuit breaker is really quite a good analogy, because that is effectively what's happening. It's a system-wide shutdown.
Right. So it doesn't fry the whole system, essentially.
Well, I think it's a safety mechanism. It's an energy conservation mechanism. So if you imagine, if you've been attacked by a bear and you're bleeding, the system wants to shut everything down and slow everything down for preservation. So it's an energy preservation mechanism.
Right.
Well, what it feels like is shut down, freeze, like when people experience being frozen. That's part of that system.
Yeah, a few years ago I realized how much of my teenage years I was dissociated, which is like spending a lot of time in shutdown, right? Or some form of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a very sensitive person, and life was just overwhelming in many, many ways. And I was playing sports. I did reasonably well at school. I had a girlfriend, so it wasn't that I wasn't living life, but I recognized that I spent a lot of time not really there, not fully there. Yeah.
Right. And that makes complete sense. If you're a particularly sensitive kid and you felt like things are too much, that makes sense. And I also think that's another important nuance of it, is like shutdown is not, it's not an all or nothing thing. There are gradations of shutdown.
Right.
So there's sort of at the extreme end, it's like you're truly frozen and you can't move. That's sort of like an animal who's playing dead, or somebody who's truly in shock.
Right.
But it can also be this subtle sense of like what you're talking about, like a dissociation, like I'm not really here. I'm still functioning in the world, but my experience is one of being a bit disconnected.
Right.
So it could have these subtle levels to it.
Yeah. No, that's important. This isn't like an off or on switch. It's a dimmer, right? It's variations, gradations of it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned a minute or two ago. You mentioned the importance of healthy relationship and attunement, and um, I want to see if we can come back to personal experience, and then maybe talk about the importance of it from a therapeutic perspective. But um, what has been your experience in your life with healthy relationship? Would you say, over the years? Do you see a change, or how would you sort of describe the evolution of healthy relationships for you?
Well, the one thing is, I think it's always, the evolution is ongoing.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So, I'm never there. But I think such a good question. For me, it's hard to separate. For me, it's hard to separate from trauma resolution.
Okay.
Because and this is me personally, if I'm walking around at a high state of anxiety or frozenness, I don't have a whole lot of access to my internal world in a nuanced and meaningful way that I can then like communicate with somebody else. I'm pretty much just walking around with a big alarm going off inside.
That's a brilliant way to put it. Yeah. Okay.
So that's a really important piece, because, and again, it took me ages and ages to be able to put words to this. And this is where the somatic, the polyvagal theory, which is what we've been talking about with the branches of the nervous system, helped to explain this.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's a big alarm going off in my body, I'm perceiving this sort of chronic threat. My sympathetic is on high. My parasympathetic is under. understimulated, my ability to connect with other people is handicapped, almost by definition.
Right.
So that's from my story anyways, and I suspect for a lot of people that it's an important piece, because it's extremely hard to feel connected to someone when I feel really threatened.
Right.
So for me, a big piece was just learning how to navigate my nervous system in such a way that I could actually discharge enough stress and fear and trauma to feel calm enough or safe enough to connect with another human being.
Right.
That for me was a big piece, and continues to be.
Right.
Yeah. And then I think the next big piece is just to work on, and again, I'm a work in progress. Like, there's no doubt about it. Is to work on authentic communication, really. Share about my experience in a way that's honest and not blaming, taking ownership, sharing the softer feelings. Yeah.
Right. Because taking ownership helps other people feel safe, right?
Yes.
And when we're not feeling like, oh, this person is holding me responsible for their experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really, really good point. Then they don't have to have their defenses up, because I'm not attacking.
Right. It doesn't feel like you're attacking them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really important bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Kim. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for me, I cannot separate the nervous system work from the relationship work.
Yeah.
To me, it's they're connected inextricably, because my ability to connect is directly related to what's going on in my nervous system.
Right. How safe you feel.
How safe I feel, or
Right.
how threatened I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking back to, again, my teenage years when I was dissociated. I had friends, but nobody knew me.
Right.
I didn't feel safe to share about what was going on. I mean, I didn't really know how to articulate it then. That was part of the experience, is like, how can I talk about something I don't have any words for, so to speak.
Yeah.
But nobody knew me. Not really. And I didn't necessarily have the capacity to know beyond kind of a mental understanding of other people, to really feel another person and to attune, where we're tuning in to another person.
Mm-hmm.
I just, as a therapist, that's a huge part of the way that we practice therapy, at least in the modalities that you and I practice, is attuning to what's happening for another person, not from a place of assumption, but possibly understanding what's happening for someone and then helping them to understand it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I can relate. I can relate.
Yeah.
To not letting anybody know me
Hmm.
out of self-protection. But I can also relate to the, like, not having words for it, not even knowing how to articulate what's happening.
Yeah, I think the somatic piece, not necessarily like my route wasn't through somatic experiencing, but through a lot of breath work, through a lot of group work, and just even seeing other people experience safety and attunement in the group process, I think really helped me, just witnessing it and sort of like getting a sense of it. And then I would have my experiences in the group process too. That was a huge thing for me. And seeing that it was okay for these people to have these big emotions that in some sense in the moment was overwhelming for them. And then, an hour later or whatever, or 10 minutes later, they were okay, so sort of just even witnessing that, I think, the group process was a big help for me, along with
Mm,
the somatic breath work, certain meditations, like kind of mindfulness stuff. So, and then eventually I found that I was starting to be able to articulate, but I had to kind of unthaw all that was frozen in there for me. That was a huge part of my experience.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, you needed to see it sort of modeled. Sounds like to a
Mm-hmm.
degree.
And just experience a lot of release, like you were describing. Just releasing what was frozen inside of me. I think before it was a combination, like we said, a lot of these things, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then I eventually, and I found this really in the program, because a big part of our program was our own um, processing, our own finding our own safety in our bodies, right? Which is a beautiful thing to experience in a program that teaches us how to be therapists. Was finally starting to trust other people.
Mm,
I'm 44 like you, and I've really only started to trust other people in the last 5 years or so. Which
yeah, isn't it amazing?
it doesn't have to take that long, but that's how long it took me.
Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah, it doesn't have to take that long, but
No, that was my
sometimes it
bad.
does.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mm,
All right, Cam. I always like to ask a few questions, sort of as we slowly wrap up here. So the first question is, what are you most grateful, or what are the few things you're most grateful for in your journey?
mm. Oh, that's a lovely question.
Hmm.
Um, just the support I think I've received from so many different people and avenues,
Hmm.
whether that's teachers, um, therapists, my parents, my partner, authors of books,
Hmm. Hmm.
like to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, certain kind of luminaries and examples that have been inspiring to me. Like Thich Nhat Hanh comes to mind
Okay. Yeah.
as somebody who, these sort of beacons of solidity and in a way, mental health.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. He's been impactful for me too, so I
has
appreciate that.
he?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think just recognizing how much support I've had and how much support is available uh,
Hmm.
is a nice, makes me feel grateful. Yeah, I think that's a big one.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you excited about? In coming in the future for you, or things you want to explore, or what is interesting or exciting to you right now?
Mm. Um, deepening self compassion, I think, for myself and also in my work. So the more that I apply it personally and professionally, the more I'm like, okay, this is, I don't want to say magical, but it kind of is. um, and there's some really interesting work. I don't know if have you read anything by John McCransky?
No. Okay.
I
No.
find he's a little bit obscure, but I think he's a teacher somewhere in Massachusetts,
Okay.
and he does research, and he's a Buddhist, and so he basically marries like modern psychology, modern science with Buddhist traditions, and sort of puts them
Okay.
together, and has some
Hmm.
very practical books and meditations and things. Um, well, what's really cool is he's combining it with sort of Buddhist meditation with attachment theory
Okay.
and parts work.
Hmm.
And that to me is very exciting, because I think it's an avenue into healing that's so practical. I find, most of my clients who come through the door did not have secure attachment growing up. And there's starting to be science showing that we can sort of create secure attachment internally
Mm-hmm.
by certain
Yeah.
practices. And they call it attachment priming. It's sort of like giving my nervous system experience a secure attachment
Okay.
over and over and over and over and over again, day after day, through practice, so that I start to feel this secure base inside that I didn't have maybe growing up. And so it just ticks all these boxes for
Yeah, I
me.
love it. I love that.
It's cool, right?
Right.
And so it's just really, it's great work. It's good work. I think it's exciting to me. It's practical, which I really like. There's science behind it, which I really like. And so to me, just sort of deepening that within myself, but also learning how to bring that into clients more, is, quite exciting.
Yeah, I love how science is really merging with a lot of the older traditions, mostly from the East, and bridging, that wisdom with a science that can understand it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I recently did a training on consciousness with one
Mm-hmm.
of my favorite sort of teachers, or Dr. Daniel Siegel.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's, I sort of introduced to him through his parenting work. I think he has some great books on parenting. I work with parents, and but just, he's really big into mindfulness, and he's very much a systems thinker, which so am
Mm-hmm.
I. And so, bringing all these different things that seem maybe disconnected into this larger picture, and having the science now to back it up with
Mm-hmm.
where we are now. So yeah, it's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's cool when they start to sort of confirm each other.
Right.
And um, and actually, funny enough, I was just reading a book by him, and he was explaining in his view that, like, the value of explaining these things scientifically is that it helps our sort of critical mind, or our
Mm-hmm.
what's the word? It's not coming to me. But our sort of doubtful mind. It helps that part of our mind to relax, so we can open to the actual experience.
Right.
So in other words, if there's part of my, if without the science, I might just go, what is this Buddhist stuff? I don't
Right.
know. It seems a bit, woo woo. But when he comes in and goes, well, actually, here's all this scientific explanation as to why this works and why it has value. And that part of our mind can sort of just go, okay, all right, so this is legitimate. And then it helps us to open to that experience
Right.
more.
Right. That makes
Was
sense.
the way, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's the way he described it. And I quite like that. I quite like that as
And
well.
this was which author?
Daniel Siegel.
Oh, Siegel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I haven't come across that.
Yeah, his book, I think it's literally just called Awareness. It's
Oh yeah, I'm partway through that one, so maybe I haven't got to that yet. Yeah, Aware, I think it's called.
or where, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
sort
brilliant.
of.
It's brilliant.
It is,
Yeah.
and that also, I know we're sort of wrapping up, but but that also ties into that whole concept of, is really, really interesting to me. Narrow focus versus open focus.
Mm. Mm.
There's a few guys out there who have studied this,
Yeah.
and so, in other words, how am I paying attention? Not only what am I paying attention to, but how am I paying attention to it?
Right.
Seems to also have a big impact on our experience.
You're meaning kind of like a laser focus versus like a floodlight. Open focus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think Siegel named in that book, he named
Mm.
that's one of the key things
Mm-hmm.
to um, sort of psychological relaxation and psychological
Mm-hmm.
health is this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like a kind intention, which
Mm.
is self-compassion,
Right.
open focus, and there was something else I can't remember, but that was one of the things he named as a key factor.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that
cool
makes
stuff.
sense. I really like in that book he talks, the framework is based on the wheel of awareness, right? Which is his sort of mindfulness practice. You can go to his website. I recommend this to a lot of my clients. One of the keys is one, you're training your attention,
Mm-hmm.
taking back that choice, like we were talking earlier about taking back the choice and practicing it because that builds the neural pathways so it becomes more natural, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but part of the practice is focusing on the hub, the focusing on awareness itself. Where does awareness come
Mm-hmm.
from? And we can't really, it's this openness. It's not this sort of individual point. It's not a thought. It's not an emotion or a sensation. It's this vastness, and I'm really excited because I'm big into spirituality and these ideas, right? Into the woo woo, and I think in many ways this hub, which in parts work or IFS we call the self, kind of this
Mm-hmm.
overall compassionate understanding part. Um, we talk about agency. I think that's a part of it too, in other healing modalities. But it's this part of us that's always there, this vastness. And I think for me, that's as we're connecting to that, that's really spiritual because it connects us to sort of something larger than ourselves, and we don't even necessarily have to label it,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's more important to experience it, as you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
and it's freeing because um, even just spending time in that is healing.
Yeah,
It sort of holds the nervous system in safety, and it does a lot of things for us. So yeah, it's beautiful work. Beautiful work.
yeah,
That author you were talking about earlier with the Buddhist stuff, that's interesting. I might have to maybe after the call, I'll get that information because I'm curious.
yeah. Sure. Yeah, I can send it over. It's good stuff, and
Hmm.
he has some free, that go along with the book. Some sort of it's a website that has some free guided meditations.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll put it in the comments so other people can check it out too.
sure.
Um, so my next question, and I enjoy the variety of answers to this question, but what was the best piece of advice you've ever received, or one or two? Would you say?
The best piece of advice I've ever received.
Or one of them, anyway.
I don't know if I could single anything out.
Or maybe what's been a helpful one or two bits of advice that you find even today that's useful for you?
Well, one thing I don't remember who said it. I think it might have been. There's a local guy called what's his name? Something Kennedy. He's a neuroscientist who now teaches courses. He had crippling anxiety for much of his life.
Okay.
Came up with this program, um, which if we were to spend an hour exploring it, would tie in very nicely to everything we've talked about today.
Okay.
There's a lot of sort of connecting to my inner wounded child and offering him safety and that kind of stuff. But anyways, he said healing is a practice.
Hmm.
It's not like a destination.
Hmm.
It's not like a one time place or thing.
Yeah.
It's a practice. It's daily things that I do and I practice and I immerse myself in.
Right.
Um, yeah, that's what's coming to mind
Yeah, it's a
at the
big one
moment
for many reasons. Yeah.
for many reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. Okay. Um, is there a question that you wish or would be helpful for people to ask themselves more often? What, especially around change and kind of like mental health or emotional health.
What do I need?
Brilliant.
What do I need?
What do I need? Hmm.
It's the quintessential self-compassion question. What
Hmm.
do I need?
Okay.
And it's not for all time. It's just, what do I need right now?
Hmm.
And it can be, you can add to, what do I need to feel safe? What do I need to feel supported right now? What do I
Hmm.
need to take care of myself right now? And I find often it's really, really simple things like I need to lie down. I, I need to eat a healthy meal and go for a walk.
Hmm.
I need to have a conversation with my dad,
Hmm.
whatever it is. Hand on heart. By the way, side note, they did a study on this,
Hmm.
self-supportive touch. They're exploring that recently.
Hmm.
And they had people do this for once a day for 20 seconds. That's it. And that was enough over 30 days to measurably lower people's cortisol levels.
Wow.
Just that.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a great practice. What do I
Mhm.
need?
Thank you. Thank you. Um, I think this will be my last question, but is there anything else that you'd want to share with my audience, with people that are interested in self change and growth, personal growth or healing?
Yeah. I think it's important to find, there's a lot of different ways to heal. I think that's one of the big things. And so I think for each person to just find teachers and therapists and books that make sense to them.
Hmm.
And then in a way to sort of pick something and just move forward. So rather than, spending loads of time looking for the exact right thing, it's like pick the thing that feels kind of right and makes sense to you
Mm-hmm.
and just start using it, start moving forward. And then things unfold, the path unfolds. That's what's coming to me right now.
Okay. No, it's brilliant. So I want to thank you again, Cam, for coming on here and having this wonderful conversation. I think I think you were able to bring a great balance of kind of what's worked for you personally, your personal experiences, as well as the clinical wisdom and a lot of compassion. Even just in your voice and your approach to all of this, which I really appreciate and the world really needs. So thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Mm. Yeah, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. And who knows, maybe sometime in the future we'll do it again.
Yeah, I would like that.
Yeah.
Curious to see how the next conversation might unfold.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Cam.
Thank you.